Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Sophia Olivas, CEO and co-founder of EverSmart City. We do affordable housing in the shipping container formats, powered by renewable energy and integrated with blockchain technology. Today, we have a special guest. I get to finally interview Larry LaMotee, co-founder and CEO of ReCapturit. Larry, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Sophia. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. This is great.
So before we go into the story of ReCapturit and before I start asking questions, I just wanted the audience to hear from you because I first met you and I heard some, just for me, staggering statistics about the amount of waste, specifically coming from commercial developments and builds, commercial developments and demolitions. So could you give them a little background of some of the statistics that you kind of shocked me with, and then we'll go into some questions.
Sure. Thanks, Sophia. Yeah. Well, why it's relevant is because my background's in architecture and construction, and I was a remodel carpenter. I built our own house, and so I had some intimate understanding of the waste that construction actually produced. And when I came up with the idea for ReCapturit a few years ago, I began to speak with professionals all around the country and all around the world. And the folks at the EPA enlightened me. What I thought was a big problem was a mammoth problem. So, one of the statistics that I heard was that everything that you and I and all 330 million Americans throw away all year long, Sophia, it's called municipal waste. Everything we throw away at working at home, municipal waste. That's huge. Okay, I thought, well, that's got to be the biggest. Nope. The EPA says that construction and demolition waste is more than 2 times municipal waste. It's that big. It's huge. It's the number one. And number one here is not not a thing to be proud of. So that's the biggest statistic, and of that, it's broken down into various categories. But a frighteningly small amount of buildings that get torn down get the materials from either demolition or deconstruction. Either heads, in the case of demolition, it usually heads to the dump. Excuse me, the landfill, and the rest is diverted and goes into recycling and some reuse. And reuse is better than recycling. And yet it's only about 20% of the potential of the building debris from demolition and deconstruction that goes to better uses, let's say, and doesn't find its demise in the dump. Then there's construction waste, which is the offput of the process of building buildings. And sometimes, or almost always, construction companies over-order in order to have enough to do the job and cut things down and to fit them into place and to make sure that they have enough and so forth and so on. But it's usually about 10% overages. Well, that typically goes to the dump. And then there are seconds, discontinued, things that get returned, things that get, like I said, discontinued, windows, doors, even masonry that's no longer in vogue, that gets tossed, or it sits idly in warehouses and out on storage lots, just dormant, waiting for something to happen, and generally nothing happens. So those are the big areas of waste and dormant materials that can be accessed and can be put into good uses. So that's why we're here.
So exactly. So that's a massive opportunity. And you, ReCapturit, has provided a solution. So let's jump into that and talk about how ReCapturit helps with that.
Okay. Want me to just start off? Okay. So, yeah, well, like I said, I had been in architecture and construction. I'd had 6 different businesses. I've got quite a long career. And I decided at a point that I was not quite satisfied with where I was in career-wise. I thought I wanted to do something bigger, something impactful, and frankly, something that was sort of the heart, close to the heart. So that waste always bothered me. So that was one of the things that I looked into as a potential to do differently. So a few years ago, I kind of untied myself from all commitments. We sold our house. I sold a business. I got off of boards, everything. And we moved to a quieter city than Seattle, and downsized a bit in order to build ReCapturit. And it was that ache that I had experienced of seeing all the waste, and then the reality of finding the actual statistical size of it, that it's kind of to me, it's the pink elephant in the room, Sophia. It's staring at all of us, and yet none of us really know about it. So that is the genesis of the reason for starting ReCapturit. Then it went into, the market research, finding out what the state of the problem was. Who is tearing things down? Who's reusing materials? Who wants these materials? Who would use them if they could get them? And with a background in architecture and construction, I got to go to architects and construction companies and ask them a lot of questions. And I asked things like, so tell me, who would like to use recaptured building materials if they could? Is there a sustainability element to it? And they would all unanimously say things like, oh, absolutely. We would love to incorporate used materials into buildings, into new construction if we could, but we just can't get it in the consistency, the quantity, the quality, and the timing that we need. And that's sort of the encapsulated answer I got from most of them. So over on the supply side, the people that tear buildings down, or that have the waste products from construction, those that are actually deconstructing buildings instead of demolishing them, where do those go? And those typically go into salvage operations, salvage stores, as we generically call them. And some of the biggest, but there's a big one by Habitat for Humanity, has a group of salvage selling places called restores, and they've got those all over the country. And that's a good example, but there's thousands more. And they accumulate all these things in giant warehouses, everything from the size of a 7-Eleven in some of the urban centers where they just can't afford to have any bigger spaces, to things that are the size of a Costco, or a Costco and a grocery store and another one, all on the same site. They're huge. They're hundreds of thousands of square feet of materials that these companies and nonprofits have accumulated to sell to people that would use them in new uses. So ReCapturit came in as a marketplace to be like a farmer's market. A farmer's market where they close off a street, and you close off a parking lot, and you put out some barriers, and then you put out some tables and tents, and the townspeople come to buy stuff from the farmers because they don't want to go out to 16 different farms on a day, and they wouldn't. And the farmers come in because they have a captive audience of people that want just exactly what they have to sell. So that's the way that ReCapturit works, only we're online, and our townspeople are people that would buy materials, recaptured building materials. So think homeowners, building owners, architects and designers on behalf of their clients, even fabulous companies like, shameless plug here, Sophia, Smart City, to incorporate into sustainable building complexes and the like. So there's that. And then on the supply side of that is these salvage sellers. And so the salvage sellers set up a store on ReCapturit. It's very easy. You can have it all set up in one day. It includes things like shipping. There's an available point of sale system. And so it's a one-stop shop for those coming to buy these materials. They can buy from several sellers around the country, as close to the home as they want, all in one transaction. The transaction is taken care of online. The shipping is taken care of online. So it's all done in one nice, neat bundle. And this organizes it to be what we want to become, which is the resource for recaptured building materials. We want to be that go-to resource for everybody that wants to incorporate these in for sustainability, for the history, for reuse, for the aesthetic quality of the materials, sometimes for the strength of the materials. I mean, things were made better, in some cases back 50, 100 years ago. So there's all
made
those
for longevity, versus consumerism.
Yeah, I'll stop.
No, that was a great intro, and thanks for telling us about the genesis of ReCapturit. The problem, most people, I really wanted to ensure that our viewers were really even aware of what's going on with the construction debris. And I mean, I remember the first time we met, I just had never heard those figures, and I thought it was the reverse. So that was eye-opening for me. So what are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? That's a nice question, Sophia. I'd say the team that we have. Like I said, I've got a long work career. I started work when I was 8, and I have only had about 6 months off in that, well, let's say many decades since. And in that time, I've worked in a lot of different places. I've worked for companies, I've worked for my own company, I've worked on teams, and I have never had a team which is as cohesive, as helpful to one another, as fun, as just this sense of camaraderie and can-doism that they've got, and they're awesome. So that's what I'm most proud of.
And I've got to bear witness of your leadership and your phenomenal team. So it has been a privilege getting to know you guys and be along with the journey alongside you. Speaking of entrepreneurs, you know, we're a certain type of breed to begin with, that you actually created and started and founded this company in the midst of a pandemic, in ongoing inflation and going into a recession. So how has the economy, what has it done for you guys, to you and for you?
Well, there's numerous facets to that, Sophia. Let's see. When COVID first came around the corner of the of 29, excuse me, in 2020, and the threat of shutdown was looming, we we were in the midst of development. We were recruiting, building our team, and getting things going for a startup is never easy. And doing all that and then getting shut down. And we were all remote workers anyway, but our team in India that is building our site, they lived in sort of a dorm style building in a beautiful modern high tech building in a center in a beautiful city in northern India, and yet the city shut them down, and so rather than sitting at their nice production desktop environments, they had to go home and work from laptops and in various Wi-Fi situations and low quality internet and all sorts of things. And that scattered things out for months. So there was that. Then, well, COVID hit. I'm the only one on our team of, let's see, 10 of us. I'm the only one who hasn't had it. So it's been through our ranks. It's slowed things down there. Here's some economic things that happen there, Sophia. One, I mentioned the salvage stores, the people that sell these this architectural salvage and used building materials. They got a lot of them got shut down. A lot of them got restrictions and regulations put on them that really hobbled their operations. They would have to, I mentioned that some of these things are the size of a Costco. They would have to have somebody walk 2 by 2 customers through the entirety of the place wherever they were. So they had to have the staff to do that, then they have to put them through on at the timing that was allowed by these rules and so forth. So there was a lot of, let's just call them roadkill. A lot of them shut down, and a lot of them were just made dormant. So we're trying to contact them as our potential sellers, and timing wasn't the best. So as 2020 went through, if they made it through 2020, 2021 came around, and materials prices, because of supply chains and other issues, materials prices for construction materials started to skyrocket quickly. So places like Home Depot did some amazing things very quickly because their chief technology officer was able to orchestrate a curbside application to be built within weeks. And so they could take advantage of that very quickly and buy stuff online because they already had an online store, online, pick it up at the curb, and boom, they're back in business. Well, if you're a small mom and pop shop in Des Moines, Iowa, or wherever you are, that's not quite at the tip of your fingers. So they took a lot longer to respond to that, but respond they did. And the ones that survived the first part of 2020 and got in through 2021 and could start responding and getting more materials that they could sell at a far cheaper rate than the materials that are on Home Depot shelves. Like a standard 2x4 was, $2-3 a few years ago. And then they went up to like $12 and $14 for a stud. Okay.
I love it for a stick, right?
Because
then that was supply chain issues, right?
Yeah.
Right. Bringing up the price along with inflation.
So there was all those things. And then add in the Great Resignation. People churning through jobs and frankly sitting on unemployment for a long time because they could. And so these sellers just didn't have the staffing, and it was slow to get staffing recuperated back up to their former levels. But now, because of the energized activity of that lower price versus higher price lumber, say, and other building materials, they had higher volumes, higher revenue. Higher revenue, lower staffing. Getting the point? Yeah. Lower staffing, higher revenues. They're busy. They're really busy. So here we come skipping tra-la, tra-lee, and hi, talking about some online solution. And they're like, oh, you guys are awesome. I love you. I got to go. I'm really busy. What? Hello? That happened countless times. So there was that. But now things have settled mostly, and we've brought on, I don't know, dozens of sellers, and that's a beautiful thing. And they are busy loading on products, and we've got nearly 1,000 exposed and many hundreds more just waiting to be finalized to expose them to the viewing public. So that's where we are now. But those are some of the big things that happened because of the economy during COVID and through it to now.
Yeah. So what are some of the most exciting things ahead?
Oh, okay. Wonderful companies like yours are starting to show themselves and as wonderful opportunities. So for sustainable housing, for disaster-resistant housing, even for let's say, I can't really say much about this one because this is a sort of one of those things under an NDA, but I can say that there will be some acceleration to the deconstruction world coming soon to be announced this fall that promises to be a huge accelerator. Yeah, exactly. Huge accelerator of deconstruction. And one of the things I've been talking about for years is that as the market of deconstruction grows, the tools will come up because tool manufacturers aren't going to start building new tools if there isn't a market to sell them in. But as more people are doing deconstruction work, they need specific tools. And when they get to a point that there are enough that will entice tool manufacturers, that's what's starting to happen. Tools will start popping up that expedite, that make more efficient the process of deconstruction, which will accelerate everything. So that's one of the most exciting things that portends. Let's see what else. So, our vision is to be, like I said, that go-to resource for all things recaptured building materials and architectural salvage. And what that will mean is that small percentage of materials that are actually getting diverted from the dump and used, put into practical new purposes as reuse, is roughly 20% of that which could. So our intent is to take that and not just tweak the needle forward, but to move the needle to double that, triple that, even quadruple that, so that as much as 80% or more of what can be diverted and reused is diverted and reused. So that is that'll be huge. That'll make a difference for the planet. That'll make a difference for future generations. That'll make
Yes.
a difference for all kinds of good things.
That's what we call technology being used for good, for the using your
Yeah,
superpowers for good things. So
that's right.
what would you say was one of your biggest mistakes?
Oh.
I think this is important for people to hear because a lot of times people get the Instagram ready CEO, the Instagram ready company, and it looks like you're an overnight success. But you and I have had many phone calls
Yeah, well,
confiding in each other. So what would you say?
so Sophia, I think you know me well enough now to know that I'm kind of a sap, and that I'm, you know, I I well up at a Hallmark ad on TV. So there have been some times when I've been like, oh, did that really happen? Did I do that? And I'd say that some of the biggest they were just bringing on companies or individuals onto the team that weren't right for what
Yeah.
we were doing. And in the company sense, disentangling a company that you have as a vendor is never quick and easy. So there's been that, but the ones that really hurt are the individuals that either let you down or quite frankly do things that they shouldn't have, that we come to find out months later that they did, that meant that we had to go and fix things that were done that we were not aware of. So
Yeah.
can't really speak into that one too much, but let's just say that it was the people issues are always the most difficult mistakes to have made. So we've gotten, like I said, we have an incredible team. So those that have stuck with us are I'm so glad we're all here. But yeah, those are the biggest mistakes. I'll tell you another one. So I knew that when I started this, one of the things I wanted the business that I was going to go do to be big enough to scare me. It had to be of such magnitude that it was something I'd never done before. And it had what I love to call the sphincter pucker factor. See that fast? It's that, yeah. It's that feeling that, you just put on the bungee cords on your feet for the first time and you're about to dive headlong off a 500-foot deep canyon off a bridge. It's that feeling. So this had that because it had global impact. It had amazing potential for helping the world. And like I said, multiple generations thereafter. So it had all that. Where was I going with that? The biggest mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest mistakes. What was that one I was just thinking of? Oh, you caught me here, Sophia. I went down a
That's okay.
rabbit
Well,
trail.
while you're thinking about that, that's such a great, so you and I have had some discussions about those moments where like, did you pucker? Like, right? So
Yeah.
my dad, my mentor of 30 years, he used to always, we would always, Bernie Dorman, he would always say, when he would always make it bigger, always, whatever vision you thought you had, he would always make it bigger. And he would always tell me, okay, what can you do to make it bigger, right? And we'd always talk about Bernie sizing it, like he would Bernie size it. And same thing with Eversmart. Like it was the first time I could recall I didn't have that confidence or ego that I had in all my other ventures, where I was
Right.
like, I don't know how I'm gonna do
Yep.
it, but I know I'm gonna do this. The same thing with this. What this one was like cold sweats late at night, like, oh my gosh, who do I think I am? That
Yeah,
voice that everybody talks about, I could
exactly.
finally start hearing it. I was like, who are you? Who do I think I
Hmm.
am that I can do this? And so I don't
The
know if any of that
imposter
helps you
syndrome.
about biggest mistakes. Yeah, yeah, the imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we and I talked about that a lot.
I've chomped on that sandwich a number of times. Yeah. But the thing about this is that I knew that this is what I forgot. So I knew that I wasn't the person I would need to be to run the company I was foreseeing. So I knew that I would have to grow into it every day, learn, and there would be a lot of learning curves and they would all be steep. So fortunately, I had good practices in practice for that, good habits. So, but coming along through the web development, well, I had never been a web developer. I had never run web development teams, and here I'm now orchestrating, architecting a marketplace from across the Atlantic, all the way to India, and sitting up late at night from 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning on this, talking with people that have a different just different perspective, and encountering those things and moving that project along at a pace. It was tiring, and I made some fumbles and dropped the ball a time or two, and those things are costly because they can cost weeks, and weeks are not something you have a whole lot in your pocket of.
Yeah. Yeah, I get
Yeah,
it. So
I
what
know you get it. I know you get it.
yeah. Yes, I do. So what prepared you for starting ReCapturit?
Hmm.
So like what are some of the things you learned from other prior businesses of yours, and what prepared you?
I think it was the paper routes.
Oh,
Okay, no. Actually, that's a joke. Not a good one, but it was a joke. But there's some truth in that. And I was in an auditorium at one of these big leadership events where they got like a former president, and they got Forbes, and they got all these big names on the stage, and you're sitting in there with 10,000 people, and they say, okay. And this was in the days when people actually knew what a paper route was, when you delivered newspapers. And I did that from age 8 to age 13 in Iowa. And they asked from stage, okay, who out here has ever had a paper route? And hands went up all around the place. And they looked through the audience, and they said, well, it looks like about roughly almost half. I'd say, let's be fair and say about 40% of you had a paper route. Okay, well, about 4 or 5% of the population had a paper route in those days. So here it was 8 times that had one. And so they extrapolated out of that and said, well, it seems that those that have the desire to go out and be independent and make their own way, and to, just work hard and get ahead, they start early. So there was that. Then that led to, like I said, I've had 6 different startups. I've been an intrapreneur, an entrepreneur. My first business was in 1990, and that was a big struggle, but not quite a flop. I got out of that one. I had a couple of businesses that were, well, roadkill. Great learning lessons, but nevertheless, they flopped. Had one that I sustained for 17 years and ended up selling. So that was good. And several others along the way, and got to help other people do that. And all those things prepared me for that. But it was an internal exercise of going into me and figuring out what am I good at? What are my strengths? What am I passionate about? Because of my strengths, I might not be passionate about all of them. Might be good at something, but I don't want to do it. And then what is the marketability of those strengths that I'm passionate about? What's the world going to pay for it? Because that's a pretty handy thing. If I was going to be a singer, I wouldn't make any money at all. And then the fourth characteristic I looked for was relative benefit to the world. And when I included that in this distillate of things that I could do, that I was good at, that I loved doing, that somebody would pay me well for, and would be of high benefit to the world in general, that combination is intoxicating. And it proves that the result was that people are attracted to it because it's doing something really good for the world. Other people want to be a part of that. And if you are in your sweet spot of operations, things that you're good at, you love doing, and you're going to be handsomely compensated for and are doing a good benefit for the world, that's a great place to be. So that was the recipe that started me on figuring out what I would do, and which led to ReCapturit.
So we're in the midst of some extreme weather. There's massive droughts, floodings. I mean, you talk about like extremes. We're just having record breaking in all different kinds of ways. And there's a global, definitely a United States recession happening. There's global inflation going on. We're coming off of, and still technically a lot of countries are still in the midst of a pandemic. So what is it that you see? Like, this is your little like crystal ball coming from both ReCapturit and you as a beautiful other human being in the world. Like, what do you see looking into the future?
Wow. Well, I always want to do my part. And going back to the strengths and the passions, you know, people ask, I'm sure they ask you all the time to do things and participate in things. And yet, you know, none of us can do everything. None of us can do all the things that we want. And so I choose to focus greatly on what I'm doing because of the benefit it will have to all of us over time, and to bring a better future. And by focusing on the biggest waster of all, we are going to lower the amount of carbon that goes in the air. So that's good. We are going to lower the need for new resources to be extracted from mines and forests and petroleum. So that's good. We are going to provide jobs, not necessarily just in ReCapturit, but by bringing up the deconstruction world, because that takes more humans than a wrecking ball on a steam engine, you know, a wrecking ball on a bulldozer or dynamite that demolition does. So all those things are really good things. And by keeping the materials as close as we can within the communities, but recognizing that shipping in efficiently of used materials is always better than shipping and buying of new materials. And that is a tested statement from a greenhouse gas and carbon footprint expert. So I'm just not making that up. I had to test that I could say that because I felt it in my gut. But let's find out the real stuff. Is it always better to use used materials in terms of their carbon footprint and greenhouse gas? And generally speaking, yes. Even, yeah. So I see that a better future if we all participate in whatever little ways or big ways we can. I just wanted to do a big way.
It's a great way to say it.
Oops.
So you guys have a really great video. I want to put it down below on your ReCapturit website. You've got this phenomenal video that I love that kind of summarizes what we've talked about, educates people on the construction debris in those statistics, and talks a little bit about you. So I put that down below.
Thank you.
So I also just want to thank you so much for your partnership and this alliance that we have, ReCapturit and Ever Smart City, where we're taking a look at and focusing on our, ahead of time before we even get into our construction, looking at and coming up with ways to be able to both utilize as much as we can from recyclable, reclaimed materials, and as well as when we're done with our debris, like what can go on from that and how can somebody else use it for something else that they're doing. And
Right.
that conversation greatly came on to focus with us through our alliance. So I thank you so much for that. And is there
Thank you.
any parting words that you would like to share? Anything that you would like to impart? Yeah.
Well, Sophia, I'll say that you and I met on a webinar, right?
That's correct.
That is our that, for whatever good or bad that is nowadays, webinars are one of the most common ways that we network these days. And
Zoomlandia.
I met you at one, and we stayed after, and we connected shortly thereafter, and communicated quickly. And that is a lesson that has worked so well so many times and paid off in so many wonderful ways that I could not possibly, enumerate on them all. But I am immensely glad that you and I stuck around, talked to one another quickly while it was still active, and chatted through chat or whatever we did to connect. But those connections, don't discount those things, because the people that go to webinars, first of all, not everybody does. They're going to spend their time, their valuable time, to learn something, to do something. And if they stick around long enough to be there at the end, that's even a better sign. And you did, I did, and we met, and these beautiful things are happening because of that. And
Yes.
so I would offer that out to everybody. Just stick around, because things thin out at the end, and people that are hungry for it will stick around till the end.
Oh, it's such a good thing. And I really do feel like companies, everyone's learning, lessons, collateral beauty from COVID, right? From the
Yep.
pandemic, from isolationism. And one of them I think that we're really learning is that we don't have to necessarily go and fly our jets and get in our cars and spend a lot of time traveling, and what that does to the planet when we can actually build and develop phenomenal relationships on Zoomlandia, on the
Zoomlander.
internet. And whatnot.
What are you, Zoomlander?
Zoomlander. That's, oh my gosh, probably gonna, sorry, that's copyrighted, but
That's copyrighted. Sorry.
but yes, so thank you so much for that. So I'm just going to end our discussion today, and thank you so much for coming on with us. And I just want to let everybody know that we have opened up our crowdfunder on wefunder.com/EverSmartCity, where everybody can participate for as little as $100. You can help fund the way that smart cities are going to be built going forward. So thank you for joining us once again, Ever Smart City, where technology enhances the human experience.